James, we really kind of separated the contenders from the pretenders there in week 8, didn't we?
We definitely did throughout the SEC and the ACC and all around the South. You were
Absolutely.
able to really outline the top 5 teams of both conferences pretty clearly this week.
Yeah. And, we have a fire to talk about, a pretty high name one. We got some college football playoff odds out. We got a different looking ACC today. It's going to be a fun show. Let's go ahead and get that footage rolling. Welcome on in to All Around the South. I'm your boy Josh, joined by my amazing co-host James. As always, James, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. We've had a few days to kind of take in what happened over the weekend. Crazy weekend of football, especially in the SEC. I think we're going to start in ACC today just because there's a little bit less to talk about. But nationally, I think we have to start with the Friday kickoff. They had a doubleheader. You start off with the Cards going down and facing the undefeated number 2 ranked Miami Hurricanes.
Yeah, man. This is a game, obviously, Louisville page. We give the disclaimer every time. Go check out the other show. It's a lot of fun. Go check it out, please. This game obviously changes the entire ACC. It also changes the national landscape a lot here. After this game, it really depends on, do you value Miami or do you think Miami did Miami things on how you look at Louisville now? Louisville, they're ranked from anywhere from 10th in the AP to 25th. It's fascinating looking into the ballots there. There's a major cog in the wheel for the ACC. Miami, I believe, now has less than like a 10% chance of making the conference championship per FPI, whereas Louisville soars up to like 13 or 14 somewhere in there. And then obviously like Georgia Tech's at like 40%. Virginia, I think, is in like the low 20s. You're probably still going to see a Georgia Tech Virginia ACC championship game. I think that's pretty easy to say. But you also still look around the league a little bit. SMU is getting a little bit hot right now. Miami, still very good ball team. Very, very good ball team. It would not surprise me if they went out and they're just kind of waiting on chaos to happen. But the ACC gets a whole lot more interesting because, in my opinion, and I don't mean this offensively to anyone, we could be looking at the ACC title game and saying, hey, the 2 highest ranked teams in the ACC aren't playing in the ACC title game now.
Yeah, I can erase that. I don't want to talk too much. We're going to talk about their performance a little bit here in a few minutes. But I think there's a legitimate chance you could have 6 teams in the ACC all with 9 wins or more. With Pittsburgh coming on, playing some good ball. You have Virginia sitting right there with the 1 loss. Miami has probably the easiest road remaining out of the ACC. Louisville hosts Clemson, and they got the SMU game, but outside of that, they're going to be favored every game outside of that SMU game. And Georgia Tech, their toughest matchups are behind them outside of that Pittsburgh game and the week before Georgia. You're probably looking at 10-2, 11-1 Georgia Tech.
Yeah. So it's fascinating for the ACC, the implications it has not only on the championship race, but on how many teams you send to the college football playoff with the Friday night. And I'm not saying that Louisville will make the college football playoff at all, but I think now we have to realistically look at them as a contender for the college football playoff, and that's not a conversation we were having 2 weeks ago. Flipping on over real quick, just talking about conference championships and college football playoff odds and whatnot, and then we'll get into the actual games. The SEC, on the other hand, I think you've really kind of seen a separation now between like your top 6 teams that are going to realistically compete for Atlanta and everybody else. It's a good league, but I think realistically there's only 6 at this time. I think it's really Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, and Vandy. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, let's talk about the elephant in the room with the SEC. How about them Commodores? Ranked in the top 10 for the first time since 1950.
Yeah. They got a real program right now. They got the good coaching. I think that we should really be having a conversation about Diego Pavia making it to New York City. I don't know if he will win the Heisman, but he's definitely in that conversation of being a finalist. And they still have a little bit of a difficult schedule to go in the league, though, is the only bugaboo. They're sitting at one loss right now to Alabama, which looks like the hottest team in the country. They're still on the road at Missouri. They're on the road at Texas, and they're on the road at Tennessee. And I know that we've talked a lot about Tennessee, especially in the past, and we're going to talk about them today. But that's still a good rivalry game, and you know that Tennessee, they could be playing spoiler maker to the Doors in that game, which is shocking to say.
Missouri got Vandy got game day this week. It's a Missouri game, didn't they?
They did. They did. So it's going to be a fun one. I think you look at this league, though, man. Alabama, who we said has a very front heavy schedule all season. They're now at 4-0 in the league. They're starting to look at LSU, Oklahoma, and at Auburn as their most difficult games to go. Texas A&M, they're looking at LSU, at Missouri, and at Texas. And then you have a team like a Georgia right now. They have a loss in the conference, which stinks for them. But their only difficult game left in the conference here is Texas. So it's going to be a fascinating sprint down the stretch to see who gets that second spot. Because I think realistically right now we can say with tiebreakers, well, Texas A&M and Alabama, one of those two is going to make the league. But
Yeah.
who's going to be that second that makes it?
So Ole Miss, probably has the statistically easiest path to the finish. They obviously lose that tiebreaker to Georgia, but it's interesting to me because I think the best team in this conference, and as you can see in the poll we're going to put out here this week, I think A&M and Alabama aren't just the two best teams in this conference; they're two of the top three teams in this country. Outside of Ohio State, both of these teams, defensively, offensively, and special teams, just their efficiency is off the charts this season.
It is. I mean, that Florida State loss is going to go down. I think we're going to look at that loss in 10 years and say, how did that happen? No. But taking it down to week 8 a little bit, talking about the actual games. We'll start in the ACC. We've already hit on the Miami Louisville game. I think that game says a lot about Louisville. I'm not super turned off by Miami anymore. Yeah, like anyone else, but I'm not super turned off by Miami like some people are. I still think Miami has one of the best rosters in the country, and that's not really debatable. We'll see how they bounce back. Pretty easy schedule the rest of the way. SMU, man. SMU's getting hot, in my opinion. You know, they go down to
So,
Clemson. Oh, sorry.
no, you go. I was going to outline it, but you can go ahead. You can go into it. I'll get it.
Okay. You know, SMU, they go down to Clemson, and I know Clemson's starting the backup quarterback. They lost Wesco in that game, which, you know, we all are hoping good things for him. I saw his season was just ended. They officially ruled him out. But SMU, they look like they're getting the offense going. The defense is slowly coming around. It still looks a little suspect at times, but they look like they could be a solid 9-win team, and I don't know if we were saying that at the beginning of the season.
This SMU team's an oddity because they're very inconsistent. Some drives, they just make offense look easy. They make it look like the SMU team you saw throughout last year. And they'll disappear for a quarter and a half. And their defense, similar to how you heard, I know it's a Louisville page, don't want to harp on it, but similar to what you saw out of the Louisville defense last year. You see them constantly beat in between their safeties and the two deep. And they've really struggled in run defense so far this year. It's improving, but the back half of their schedule, they have both Louisville and Miami. It's going to be interesting to see how this SMU defense comes around. I think they had the offense of Kevin Jennings is enough to be able to score some points, but you can't ask him to score 30 every night.
No, I don't think that's realistic. You look at Louisville, they have a top 10 defense. Miami, I think they still have a top 15 defense after last week. And you got to figure out a way to, I would say, score at least 3 touchdowns against those teams. And that looks like a hard task right now. Bouncing around, though, to kind of a similar conversation, Georgia Tech, they're now ranked in the top 10, which is awesome for them. I think they have a heck of a program down there. They play Duke. That was a weird game. Duke felt like they kept shooting themselves in the foot. Georgia Tech did a lot of things right. You know, they are on the road, they win. But for the Georgia Tech conversation, you know, they're wanting to run the ball in between the tackles. They're getting Haynes King involved as much as possible. He's Mr. Do-It-All. Their defense, though, looks very, very suspect, especially against the pass game, in my opinion.
Georgia Tech got doubled up from in between the 20s, and Duke was able to dominate time of possession in this game. And that's weird when you're talking about a Georgia Tech team because they love to
Mhm.
run the ball and control that clock. But Duke was able to keep the ball at the field through the air. That's been a reoccurring issue with this Georgia Tech defense this year. Is their inability to get off the field. You saw it in the Wake Forest game a couple weeks ago. I left this game. I knew Georgia Tech was good. I know they're a good team. That good teams win their nasty games. That was a nasty game for them defensively. Duke has a serious problem with red zone offense. Um, Going into the third quarter, they had 4 red zone drives and only had 3 points.
Yeah. And then final game to talk about, I really think in the ACC, Virginia survives a weird game against Washington State and Wazoo.
So Wazoo's coming off that game against Ole Miss. This looks a little bit better than what it would have been 2 weeks ago. Wazoo's defense is coming around. Their offense is very suspect. But Virginia's that team, though, that they're not playing great week in, week out. But they're doing the little things, doing just enough to get by, and that's going to be enough to get on the Charlotte.
Yeah, I agree. Washington State's a weird team with the Ole Miss result, to be completely honest with you. I've never been super, super high on Virginia. You know, we look back, the Florida State win, you look at it and you say, it's not as good as you thought it was. The Louisville win, you can really pick out a few things and say, well, did Louisville really lose that game? And you have that conversation. But with Virginia, I hope they went out. I don't see it happening with this squad.
Mm-hmm.
They're very boomer bust on offense, in my opinion. And the defense is kind of treading in a similar situation, in my opinion. But they don't
And
really
that's
play
one
anyone
thing.
in the league, you know.
Yeah, I agree. They played that Duke game, and that's their toughest game remaining in the conference.
Well, yeah, this kind of goes along with the college football playoff thing, but we could be looking at a very weird situation where you have a Virginia team that is X-1. They go to the conference championship, they lose, and then a team like a Louisville, who they have a head-to-head with, gets the bid over Virginia. Which I know nobody likes that situation, but that's a realistic. That's a conversation we're going to be having. Virginia, they don't have a quality win outside of Louisville. They're really probably going to have a bottom half, like 50s, 60s SOR, SOS. Scheduling matters, man. Who you beat matters.
Yeah, I do think Virginia it's going to come back to hurt them. Yes, they're going to get to the conference championship game, most likely due to the back half of your schedule being a little bit lesser than the front half. But it's going to hurt you coming back if you got a Miami and a Louisville there 11-1 there, and you're 11-2, and one of your losses is to NC State.
Yeah. Yeah. Bumping on over to the SEC, though, a couple little games to talk about. Texas A&M and Arkansas. That was a fun game.
That was a shootout. That was one of those just classic get the ball out and go. Texas A&M has a serious Heisman candidate at quarterback.
My goodness, yes. Marcel Reed, man,
I'm
he's doing everything right.
I love the way they are able to scheme guys open, because even whenever defenses adjust, they're just able to adapt and be able to put their quarterback in positions where Reed's able to just dissect the defense. I think they've scored 43 straight weeks, if I'm not wrong.
It sounds about right.
Like, that offense is insane.
Well, are you a little concerned with their defense with how high scoring that game was against Arkansas?
I am, but at the same time, it's Arkansas. It's Bobby P. But he's going to get his points. He's an offensive guru. He's going to be able to scheme up. He's going to be able to get his points. You've seen that every week. You saw that back when he was the OC before they fired Pittman in the first half. Whenever he was able to just go out, he scored 28 points in the first half, 3 weeks in a row. And you're just seeing that all 4 quarters. So I think that this game being 45-42 is less about their defense playing bad. I think they just played an offense that's well coached, and they have the guys needed to play Bobby P's system the way he needs to.
Yeah. The next game we'll hit on, Missouri's going down to Auburn, and that game was just drunk. That was a silly football game.
That game got nasty.
It was, man. So I look at that game, and Auburn has a problem, and this is going to sound like the most breaking analysis in the world. They just have a problem winning football games. I don't know if they know how to win.
They've played 4, if not 5 ranked games. They've been within 1 possession in all those games
Yeah.
in the 4th
It's
quarter. It just seems like they self-destruct. And that the problem with that is that's the same thing you used to say about Hugh Freeze's teams at Ole Miss.
mhm.
So, is it an
Yeah.
Auburn problem or is it a Freeze problem? And that's one thing that Auburn's gonna have to kinda figure out as the year goes on.
They will. What worries me about that game with Missouri, I sung a lot of high praises about the way that Missouri played Alabama, and Missouri's offense looks anemic at times, in my opinion. Prebula looks like he's kind of regressing in the pass game, and that's really right there why I have Missouri not in this list of top 6 teams I think can realistically make Atlanta.
Yeah.
Moving around though, you have the 3rd Saturday in October, you have Alabama and Tennessee. Tennessee's going down to Tuscaloosa. And man, it's the same story we've said the past 3, 4 weeks now. Alabama looks like legitimately the best, if not one of the top 3 teams in the country right now. The pass game is electric with Ty Simpson. The defense is kind of turning it around a little bit here more. And on the flip side of that, you look at Tennessee. If you had questions about the pass defense before this game, you definitely got questions about it now.
So, I wanna compare something. So, last year, Tennessee made it to the playoff on the back of their running game and their defense. This year, they have a better passing offense. Lesser of a running offense, but still there. But the issue is, last year, there was room for mistakes on the offensive side. The defense would be able to fix it. This year, it kinda feels like if the offense has to punt, the game's over because the defense can't get a stop. Like, ev it's hard to explain because they brought back majority of that defensive production, but Tennessee's defense looks like a bottom half SEC defense the past 4 weeks. They've allowed
Mhm.
over 30 points 3 straight games. And don't get me wrong, you're playing high quality competition, but the issue is the amount of money that's going into that program, you expect more out of that team.
Yeah, no, I agree. Then final result to talk about, Ole Miss going down to Georgia. Georgia doing that Georgia thing where, hey, we have Kirby Smart on the sideline. We have the roster that we have. We're going to win this game. Gunnar Stockton, I think, has his best game in a Georgia uniform up until this point. But again, concerned about the Georgia secondary. And that's a constant concern. And I'm starting to ask myself, are we concerned about Georgia's secondary because they got picked apart by probably the best pass game in the country in Alabama? Or is there more concerns than that there at Georgia?
Well, okay, so I'm gonna break this down. Cutter Boley for Kentucky went 12 of 16 for 175 yards and a touchdown, and was 5 yards away from throwing another touchdown in the first half against Georgia. Jackson Arnold threw for over 150 yards in the first half against Georgia. Trinidad Chamberlain went 8 of 8 on third downs through 3 quarters and threw for over 275 yards in 2.5 quarters. The Georgia defense, it kind of feels like they're sleepwalking. Because in
Mm,
the 4th quarter of these games, they're lights out. Nothing's going. But the issue is, and you saw that against Alabama, you can't sleepwalk through the SEC. It's just not, you can't do it. I think with the offense coming around, it's helping it a little bit because they're able to take these 10, 14 play drives and be able to just run it down the defense's throat. They have some of the best power backs you'll see in the country. Um, But there's serious concern. I was more concerned with their inability to get off the field on third down. Not even just the passing defense. Their linebackers were just not getting in their contains correctly through most of that game. And Ole Miss was really able to do whatever they wanted up until the 4th quarter.
yeah, no, I agree. Taking us on over though, a underlooked facet that's going to make Week 8 insane. We got a very big job opening that just came up. Florida finally getting rid of Sunbelt Billy. And that's one of those jobs where that's up there with the Penn State job and who they're going to get. I ain't going to sit here and try to speculate about who they're going to get. The guy's been fired for two days. But my question for you, who is the next guy fired if I give you two options? Is it Mike Norvell or is it Hugh Freeze?
What if I told you I don't think it's either one? Out of those two, I'll have an answer, but I think the next major coach fired will not be one of those two.
Okay.
I'll answer your question, then I'll tell you who I think is more likely, and I'll explain
Okay.
why. Between those two, I think Mike Norvell's going to get graced to the end of the year. I think the AD's already gave him a vote of confidence. And I think it's notable to say that Hugh Freeze has came out and been openly asking for a vote of confidence from his AD, and AD has refused to give it.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing about this is I think Brian Kelly's going to be the next coach fired.
You think so?
I think LSU, they have a certain standard. I think you saw it with Eddie O. There may be news coming up for him in the future. You don't know. Eddie O always talking about wanting to come back to the game. Eddie O was a year or two off winning a national championship. I think he was 7-3 whenever they told him he could go. And he had set a standard of winning. All Brian Kelly's done since he went to Baton Rouge is he's proven, I can beat the unranked teams, but he's consistently shoots himself in the foot and can't close off these ranked games. He's coming off this weekend where he honestly defensively just got dominated by Vanderbilt and Diego Pavia, and his schedule doesn't get any easier. They very well could be 5-3 after this week, and there's a real chance that LSU team's going to struggle to get to 8 wins.
So I have a kind of a take about Brian Kelly. I don't think he's fired. I don't think that. It wouldn't surprise me if Brian Kelly starts shopping his name a lot for like the Penn State job. If he gets to the point where he looks around and he says, hey, things are getting a little hostile down here in Baton Rouge. What if I go up to Penn State and reset the clock? Because Penn State will pay me similar money.
If he does it, does his accent change?
Does it revert back to his normal northern accent? That is the $1 million question right there. But I could see it. I genuinely could. I could see him kind of shopping around a job here. The other guy I wouldn't be surprised to see shop around for a job in the SEC is Drinkowitz. I think you could see. I know that the big talk of the town is obviously, is Lane Kiffin going to go to Florida? But I think the real conversation is, does Florida make a move on Drink? Because I think they could.
This coaching carousel this season is going to be insane. You got the Virginia Tech job. They're saying they're going to put in over $225 million, I think was the number that they're floating around, into the program. You got the Penn State job. You get the Florida job. You're going to see some other jobs. So you're going to see UCLA. They're going to fill that role. They're going to put some money into that program now that the Big Ten out there. It's just, who knows what's going to happen. You got rumors floating around in the Texas camp, as we're going to talk about that. There's some play calling issues.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think it's Sark going away. I think it's hey brother, we need a real OC.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's similar to what happened in Florida though. They weren't clamoring for a new coach. They were just wanting a new OC and they couldn't get it. But you're starting to hear those similar conversations of we need an OC to call the plays. Texas had some trouble this week. They got doubled up by a bad Kentucky offense, but they were able to get it done by the back of that defense. That's a reoccurring theme of Texas's football season this season is they're winning in spite of the offense.
They are. The one thing I would say with the coaching carousel, a couple of these ACC programs need to lock down their coaches in the next few weeks. That specifically is Jeff Brom at Louisville and Brent Key at Georgia Tech. I know it's a similar situation for both of them. They're alma maters to those schools. They love those schools. I get it. But they're both kind of underpaid when you look at it on a national sense. Both of them are making less than $6 million a year. Both of those programs can afford to pay those coaches more than $6 million. You got to put some paper to pen or some pen to ink. You got to put some ink to paper here and get those guys locked down because those are both two hot names. You're seeing Brom thrown around a lot for that Penn State job. And there was a rumor going around that he was entertaining a Florida phone call the other day. Brent Key, those conversations are going to come really quickly as well. But the last thing I kind of want to hit on with the whole coaching and everything, I would not be surprised if one of these lesser SEC schools potentially loses a coach. I wouldn't. If you see, and this ain't me trying to put bad juju out in the air, but let's say a situation where Shane Beamer, okay, he's had a really good thing going in South Carolina. This year has not looked up to standards. It's not what they were all expecting. They were all expecting to be an 8-9 win ball team. That doesn't look feasible at this point in time. And he's getting some real heat right now from that athletic department and from that fan base about how the season has went. Well, what if a guy like him goes up to Virginia Tech? Again, they reset that clock because that's what it's all about. You're trying to get paid for as long as possible. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it's a possibility. Same thing for like a Brian Kelly going up to Penn State, resetting that clock. A Lane Kiffin going to Florida. You know, there's possibilities there, and it's just going to be one of those cycles where, yeah, the top end is really, really heavy right now on what's open, but the reverberations of what those high rents are going to open up could also be massive.
It kind of feels like one of those situations, as we talked about in the other show, the similarities to this season compared to 2007. It kind of feels like one of those situations where the biggest shoe is yet to fall. So it feels like there will be another big job to come open. That's why I'm leaning LSU. I would not be shocked if it comes from the Big Ten, though.
If you are Florida and you're Auburn and you have to make a coaching change, who is the first guy you're calling this year?
So I've talked to a couple of people around Florida. If I'm Florida, I think their defense is fine. Like if you're able to keep their defensive coordinator and keep the defensive talent you have, and just bring in an offensive head coach, I think you shortlist. I think you entertain getting James Franklin down there just as his way to develop talent and bring in talent. I think if you're wanting a guy to kind of not being a coach but can prove it, I think you call Will Stein, the OC over at Oregon. Um, I also think if you want an offensive coach who's going to be able to really confuse some of these SEC defenses, do not rule out guys like Bob Chesney from JMU. That's a coach that may not get the looks from those bigger programs, but he's like Kirk Cignetti before him. He's a guy that can make some changes at a program that gives him an opportunity. And I think it's more so Auburn. I'd be looking at schools like JMU's, the John Summerall down at Tulane. That's a guy that you can bring in and really change the program. He's proven it down there. Honestly, I think you might try to call Oak Cliff Kingsbury. It may be a little bit longer. It may be a bit of a risk, but he's proven he can score some points. If you're able to get a solid defense coordinator in there, you can really just go.
I'm not trying to put bad juju out in the world, but I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you foresee a situation where Clemson's season just goes off the rails, which looks possible at this point in time, and Dabo says, you know what? I'm done with it. I don't want to deal with the current state of college football. I'm walking away from it. I'm retiring.
So I see a realistic world where it falls, it kind of it leaves the tracks, so to speak, and they don't make a bowl. I don't think he retires. I think you could see Dabo take one of these big jobs, especially with the way especially if the department kind of tries to place the blame fully on him, because he's shown that he's getting a little bit uneasy. He's starting to talk back a little bit more often than he used to. And I think he's a coach that he's still young relatively compared to some of the other people that in the ACC coaching between Mac Brown and Bill Belichick. And I think he's early 50s still, Dabo is. It's like he still has a lot of winning. He's still a really good coach. I just think some outside things have caused this season to kind of fall off because, like we said, going into this year, Clemson has a top 5 roster. He's able to get the guys in there. I don't know if he'll take it, but the thought of Dabo in State College is something that could scare a lot of teams in the Big.
No, I agree. And it's not one of those things that I think will absolutely happen, but it's definitely one of those things with the way that this cycle is went, you have to think about.
Mhm.
Um, and I mean, my goodness, if the ACC has openings at Florida State and Clemson at the same time, that is a interesting thought process for the entire league. So, but that's going to round us up on coaching. There's only really so much we can say about it. I mean, we could do a 2-hour show on it, but that's not our place. We're not going to do that. Looking forward though to week 9, I'm going to be really honest. This is an awful week for the ACC. This is just a terrible week. You don't really have a very big matchup in the ACC this week, and you don't really have a matchup that's going to look competitive at the high level of the league. So I don't have any games I really want to hit on the ACC personally.
Well, to sum up this week 9, the 2 night games for the ACC, you got Louisville hosting Boston College. They're 25.5-point favorites currently. And you got
That
a
line's gotten that
madhouse.
high.
Yeah, it's gotten up. It's went up to 25.5.
Jeez, man. Okay, sorry.
They opened 22 and a half. It's up to 25.5. And the other nightcap on ESPN is Miami and Stanford. Miami's
Yeah,
mad, and then they get a prime time slot on Saturday. It's their military appreciation night. Miami might win that game by 40 points. And that's
yeah,
not taking anything away from
yeah,
Stanford, by the way. It's just Miami, the top 5 team.
yeah, yeah. Just a kind of a crappy week for the ACC when you put it that way. They're showcasing 2 more than likely blowouts in the league. Switch on over to the SEC though. I think you got 3 really good games. First one's gonna be College game day. That's gonna be Missouri traveling on up to Nashville against Vanderbilt. Does this game feel like a loser is eliminated from the college football playoff game?
It definitely does. And it's more so based on it kind of feels like one of those games where all your shoes are in one basket. And Missouri threw all their shoes in that Alabama game. And last
Mhm.
week it just felt like they were fully edged out there for the world to see and they're exposed. This is a big game for them. Win, lose, they have to win it. Just because if after what they the performance they put out last week, if they come out and allow Diego Pavia to do what he did to LSU last week, this Missouri team's season could really fall off the wheels. And what was once a promising possible playoff could end in disaster. On the flip side of this, I don't think it's that drastic for Vanderbilt. The issue with Vanderbilt is they have an incredibly tough end of their schedule in the conference. And it kind of feels like if they don't, they have to get this one. And if they don't, they put themselves in a situation where they're going to have to blow one of those other 2 teams out.
Yeah, because I mean, you look at it, you're at Texas and at Tennessee. I would argue I don't think Texas is anything special right now, but DKR is a hard place to play. Tennessee, that's a rivalry game, and it's there in Knoxville. That's a different environment as well. This feels like your best opportunity to really get a good win here, if that makes
Hmm.
sense, out of those 3 games.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
With Missouri specifically, I I'm so back and forth on if this is a get right game or if this is a collapse game. Missouri's offense it just flat out struggled against Auburn. It struggled at times against Alabama, and you try not to overread into that too much because Alabama, we think they're a really, really good football team. Teams are going to struggle against a really, really good football team. But you're playing a Vanderbilt defense it's a good unit, but I wouldn't say it's anything like super special. But it is a very
Hmm.
good unit. It's a respectable unit. They play a nasty brand of football. Missouri's defense, we're not really all that concerned about, in my opinion. Missouri's defenses look good. They've done enough throughout the season. And Vanderbilt, they have a very one-dimensional offense, in my opinion. It's put the ball in Diego Pavia's hands and let him make plays. So this is going to be a really, really fun game to watch. I think it's going to be kind of an ugly game also, truthfully.
I think this game looks a lot like that Auburn game. I think the issue with this game is, and the kind of matchup to watch is how do the Missouri linebackers match up with those tight ends of Vanderbilt, because 70% of the Diego Pavia's completions last week were to those two tight ends.
Mm-hmm. I think this game really comes down to who can establish the quarterback run game. And whoever can do that and whoever can consistently get like 3 to 4 yards per play is going to end up winning this football game. Me personally, though, we'll go into game picks. I think that Vanderbilt wins this game. There's just something special right now about Diego Pavia. There's something special about what they're doing. And I think it's going to be a very ugly game, similar to that Auburn game we just saw from Missouri. But I think Vanderbilt gets it done, and they get it done by about 1 touchdown.
So I picked Vanderbilt to beat LSU last week. Vanderbilt's one of those teams that it's really hard to gauge what they're going to be. Because in some moments, they look like they could be a top 4 team in the SEC. I think we've landed on they're a top 5 team. But I think then you go through some times where that defense is getting gashed. There's moments in that last week LSU was just able to get whatever they wanted when they want, and LSU's not a very good running offense this season. They're last statistically in the conference, and they were able to get 4.7 yards per carry last week, or at least that's what it was 3/4. I'm taking Missouri just because I think Missouri's going to be able to feed Hardy, and they're able to kind of implement the quarterback run early. I think it just means this game is Missouri's season. If you go in, you lose this game, you've lost now 2 of the last 3, and you can argue you should that Auburn game you won due to some coaching decisions not on your side.
Mm-hmm. Game's definitely an Atlanta eliminator game for both teams, but it just feels like a college football playoff elimination game also to me, because if Vanderbilt loses, I don't see them bouncing back and getting the wins that they need to get. Moving on though, next game we want to highlight the conference side is Ole Miss traveling to Oklahoma. This is going to be such of a fun one to watch for me because that Oklahoma defense is legit, man.
Okay, so this is another eliminator for Atlanta because you got Oklahoma team that
I
lost.
I think this is realistically a college football playoff eliminator.
Yeah. You got Ole Miss that's coming off the loss at Georgia. Don't get me wrong, it's at Georgia. You were up for a majority of the game. So you're getting a little bit of leniency in the polls right now because you lost at Georgia. And I think we've all kind of cooked that Georgia's a top 5 team again. They're figuring it out. But if you go to Oklahoma, and this is a little unfair because when Mateer is healthy, Oklahoma's been look like a top 5 team as well. The reality is a 10-2 Ole Miss team. If you leave, you're 10-2, and your best win is a bad LSU team. Like I said, I think LSU's going to be 5-3 after this week. So a 5-3 LSU team's your best win. I think it eliminates you from the playoff, and then you're 2 games in a hole into the conference, and I don't think that gets you to Atlanta. On the flip side of that, for Oklahoma, you already have lost to a Texas team that doesn't look great. I know Mateer wasn't healthy. The back half of your schedule is a little tougher in conference. You can't afford to lose this one because the odds of that being your only loss the rest of the way is not very likely.
Yeah. The fun matchup to watch is going to be Ole Miss's offense against Oklahoma's defense. Offense.
Yeah. In that Oklahoma team, I think they might be. Don't get me. I think I've watched a lot of football the past 8-9 weeks. I think that Oklahoma defense may be the best unit in the country. I think their rankings a little bit skewed from that Red River Shootout, where they kind of, let's be honest, their offense wasn't moving the ball, so they were on a field for over 100 snaps, and you can't really ask a defense to be on the field that much. Eventually, you're going to get gashed, and that's what happened.
Yeah. So the way I look at this, I'm interested to see, hey, is this Ole Miss offense what we think they can be, or are they what they have shown? And you're going to learn that this week really, really quickly. Alongside with that, Mateer should be healthy-ish.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a weekly thing. He gets better every week. And you could kind of reinvigorate your offense here against Ole Miss. No offense to Ole Miss. They're a fine defense, but they're not, to that level that we're speaking of when we talk about, an Oklahoma defense. If Oklahoma can consistently, if they can do what Texas did to Oklahoma will win this football game all day. And I think that's kind of what you see. I think they really lean on Oklahoma's defense. They really stall out a lot of these Ole Miss drives, and they just dominate the time of possession, and they win the football game.
That's where I am. I think defense is able to win the big ones. I think you've seen that consistently as the years gone on. The defense that makes the most plays is who ends up winning the game. You saw that even last week in that shootout with Georgia. Georgia's defense just made plays in that fourth quarter. I think Oklahoma wins this game. I think the crowd's going to be invested in it. They know how big this is. I think this could be a chance for Mateer to get back in the Heisman race.
Yeah. Final game to hit on here. Final game. Texas A&M traveling to LSU. You've said a lot about the Tigers already, and you think them their ability to win this game. I kind of feel like the same. And this is definitely a game. If LSU loses this game, they're eliminated from the college football playoff and from Atlanta, just outright. And if LSU loses this game at home, I get it. Texas A&M, they're top 3 team. I get they're a good team. But there's a lot of heat that gets ratcheted up on Brian Kelly really, really quickly.
Here's the issue with this LSU team, and a team that's built a lot on the portal. I don't want to talk about it, but let's be honest about the guys they brought in. A lot of the guys they brought in left their former team due to performance issues as a team. Not then they were able to put up. So it's. I don't think it's going to bode well if you're bringing in guys, teach them we can come to LSU, you can do better. Bringing in guys off 6 and 6, 7 and 5 teams, and then going 6 and 6, 7 and 5 consistently, and that's what you've seen out of Brian Kelly the past 3 years. And I just don't know how much of more of a leash you're going to have, because the SEC. Here's the issue with the LSU is they're staying what they are. They're going to do what they do. Brian Kelly did the same thing at Notre Dame. He did what he did. The only issue is everybody else is getting better.
Mm-hmm. I mean, perfect example is Texas A&M.
Yeah,
look at Texas A&M 3 years ago. You know, I completely agree. I think it's a different topic for another time. I'm sorry, it's a topic we could really talk about. But with Texas A&M here, man, I think that they are able just to move the ball at will. Is Whit Weeks still out next week?
They haven't announced it yet. I think it's day to day right now.
Okay. I think that Marcel Reed's able to just move the ball. And truthfully speaking, I think this one could get ugly.
That's what I think this game ends up just due to the inability for LSU to be able to really run the ball. And they lost 2 tackles last week after they were already starting 2 backup tackles. I think Texas A&M is able to get pressure constantly on Garrett Nussmeier, is able to take away the deep passing game. I think this game could end up a 30, 40-point win for the A&M, and it really pushes the conversation of, is A&M the number 1 team in the country?
Uh-huh. All right. Well, that's going to wrap us up previewing week 9. Anything else major you want to hit on before we get out of here?
I think that'll be it. On the playoffs, the first playoff, we're going to start discussing that in the weeks coming up. You're going to hear us really break that down. It's going to be a little bit down week for the ACC. The ACC has some big matchups. One game to watch if you are just a football sicko and you want to see a rivalry. Kentucky plays Tennessee late night on Saturday. Tennessee, if you don't get that one, well, it's time to have a conversation.
Yeah, that Texas-Kentucky game was one of the worst football games I've ever sat through. But yeah, no, I agree. One thing I will say, really what you've hit on, we're essentially everyone's played 6 games this season. Most teams have played 7. You are getting to that point where the college football playoff discussion is a real discussion that you'll hear probably every week on this show. It's a continuously evolving discussion. If you're the SEC right now, you want to get 4 teams in, because I think realistically you're looking at the Big Ten putting in 3. I don't see anybody else outside of Ohio State, Oregon, and Indiana getting in over there. But what you're really concerned about is what's going on in the ACC and what's going on with Notre Dame. Notre Dame looks like they're going to win out the rest of the way, go 10-2. They'll probably get in at 10-2. But with the ACC, like what we talked about, You're really, really hoping that Miami and Louisville drop a game. Because if those two teams are sitting at 11-1 and they're outside of that ACC championship game, you're starting to have a lot of really, really interesting conversations really quickly. And the SEC getting in 4 may turn into the SEC getting in 3. And God help us if we're in a world where the ACC, the SEC, and the Big Ten all send 3 schools. God
And
help us.
and what we say for the year, the Big 12 is most likely going to send 1 team. Here's the issue: there's 2 teams right there. In Texas Tech, who's a loaded team, put a lot of money in that program, and BYU, they're just a machine. It don't matter who they got at quarterback; they're just able to figure things out. That's a situation to watch in the weeks coming up, is how the Big 12 unfolds.
Yeah, because you could have there's an interesting conversation. So you got 12 spots, okay? I know it's not technically a thing, but for the ease of the conversation, we're gonna say you have the G5 spot.
Mm-hmm.
So you're down to 11. Well, so we need to find 11 teams here. Oregon, Ohio State, Indiana. There's 3. We'll say I think right now Alabama, Texas A&M. That's
Georgia.
5. Georgia. I think we're confident in those 3. So you're at 6. The ACC winner, there's 7. The Big 12 winner, there's 8. BYU or Texas, there's 9.
Notre Dame.
Miami or Louisville, there's 10. Notre Dame, let's say, the other of the Miami Louisville. So you got a fascinating playoff race here developing in real time in front of us. And really, if you're a college football fan, man, watch around the country here. Especially watch the ACC and watch the Big 12.
Oh, one last thing. Big G5 game this week. USF and Memphis. Memphis is coming off a loss
Yes.
when they were favored. This is one that could fully eliminate them from the playoff. Same thing for USF, though. USF cannot afford to drop this one.
Yeah. But that's going to wrap us out on, though. Thank you so much for tuning in to All Around the South, as always. Hitting on a little week 9 look ahead, a little talking in week 8 review, some coaching changes, college football playoff, conference championship games. Get ready. This is probably the same format of a show you'll see the rest of this season. Maybe not the coaching changes, but you're definitely going to hear more and more conference championship and college football playoff talk. If you want to support us, the best way you can support us, just subscribe, follow us, like, share, comment. We'd love it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll hit you all up next week. And as always, talk to you later.